a frank exchange that I'm about to have with Ukraine's Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk. Before we begin our Q&A, and of course invite you for your questions to the Prime Minister as well, I'm going to invite him to sum up where he thinks the country is and to give us his overview of the current situation. So I'm going to give the floor to the Prime Minister, and then we'll get on with the Q&A. But Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Morning to everyone. Morning, Stephen. I was thinking that we will have the breakfast, but I see that we have to work, so I'll probably try to deliver a number of messages on behalf of the Ukrainian government. Look, I do remember our last meeting in the same hall at the same YES conference, and I do praise and commend Viktor Pinchuk for holding this kind of conference. And we've been talking about the future of Ukraine. What happened in the last year? First of all, we had free and fair elections, and the new government was formed. And I want particularly focus on the new government, because this is an entirely new government in the history of Ukraine. And not only due to the fact that this is an English-speaking government, except Ukraine and in other languages. This is a new type of mentality, new type of vision, and new type of responsibility. So, first of all, I will praise my team, my government, and the reform agenda that was imposed and undertaken by this government. The second issue is that we formed the coalition. Well, the coalition, you know that politics is quite a specific thing, so it's important to maintain the coalition, and it's really important to have the political will and to have the political strength to pass reforms. So our coalition consists of 5 parties, 1 party left, so only 4 parties left, and fragility of the political coalition is, I would say, quite an impressive roadblock on our reform agenda path. But we still managed to pass very tough, one can say unpopular, but I will say necessary reforms for this country. No previous government in the last 20 years never did this kind of job as this government already made. When I decided to take, well, together with my coalition members and with my party, to take the office of the Prime Minister for the second time, I was entirely sure what kind of outcomes I am to face as a politician. And there was, a choice. On the one hand, every politician wants to have high approval rating. If you want to get high approval rating in a long-term strategy, frankly speaking, you have to be populistic, saying that, look, we are to deliver everything to everyone. On the other hand, if you want to get high approval rating for your country, which is my personal aim and the aim of every member of my government, you must undertake bold, wise, strong, sometimes unpopular, but definitely necessary decisions in the future. And this government passed a number of these decisions in the energy sector, in the social sector, fixing the budget gap, providing a new type of tax policy, building up new Ukrainian army and National Guard, tackling corruption, deregulating Ukrainian economy, imposing good governance in state-owned enterprises. So we are doing step by step. We do understand that we've done a lot, but we have to make much more. If I say we, it means not only the government, it means everyone. Everyone in the country. We managed to retain political unity with the president, which never happened before in the Ukrainian history. Under the new old constitution of 2004. So this is not just the cohabitation, this is a real strong cooperation between two institutions. We believe that Ukrainian coalition is to support the reform agenda, but the key issue in this reform agenda is that the only ally and the strongest ally the government is to have, this is the Ukrainian people. And that's the reason we need to support the Ukrainian people and to deliver tangible and real results. Similar as we did with the police reform, similar as the government passed a new bill, well, asked the House to pass the bill over the social wages and pension increase, similar that we passed in terms of deregulation. So people need to get some kind of deliverables. And it's up to the government to provide Ukrainian people with the result. I believe that this way is very bumpy, because this is the most comprehensive and challenging reform agenda after the reunification of Germany even. We are facing tremendous challenges. And we, as one Ukrainian nation, have together to address all these challenges and to move forward. I will appreciate if we start a debate. I am ready to answer any questions you have. Hard question, hard talk, tough questions. You have hard talk, we have hard toil. So we believe that we are on the right track. But we do understand that the number of troubles we are facing, and that we have to do more every day. If one believes that you can get a blue ribbon or medal of honors for making your job as a prime minister or as a minister, that's not true. We already got our blue ribbon, having the office of the prime minister and the office of the minister. So for today, we have to serve our country. That's our obligation. And not to think about just only today, but to build up the future of this country. And this is our joint goal. Thank you. Ready to answer any questions.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. Now, I must say, your openness to questions and to hard talk is admirable, and I can tell you there are an awful lot of elected leaders around the world who aren't as open to it as you are, and I do appreciate that. So let's get on with it, and then we'll get questions from the audience too. You just said some very interesting things. You said that we've done a lot, we need to do much more, and you said that our ally has to be the Ukrainian people. Well, it seems to me, on my visit this time, obviously I've been coming to Kiev for years now, that alliance between government and people is in very grave danger of being severed. This country seems unhappy, it seems divided, and it seems very disenchanted with you and your government. Why do you think that is?
We are not the first one in the world, and mainly in Europe, who passed these kind of reforms. We can easily, for example, ask President Kwasniewski what happened in Poland 20 years ago with a number of Polish politicians, once again, for example, Balcerowicz. They passed similar tough reforms in energy sector, tax reform, social reform, and this is normal. When people are upset, when you increase utility bills by 6 times, when you impose new taxes, when you entirely overhaul social security system, when you close the tax loopholes, when you press on the oligarchs that own key Ukrainian TV channels and a number of enterprises, when you are doing your job and people want to get, and this is, once again, it's absolutely normal when people want to get the result as quick as possible. But we did a lot of things in order to mitigate these negative effects. As we increased tariffs for the households, the government launched a large-scale program of subsidies. We were sharply criticized, but it's all about numbers. Last year, it was only 450,000 Ukrainian households subscribed to this program. This year is 2.7 million, and we expect another 2 million. So this is the reality.
If I may,
go ahead.
You've laid out, your vision of why it will work and is working, but just it seems to me the problem is this, that right now, you talked about some subsidies and some help for poorer people, but the fact is that people's energy bills are going to go sky high. The inflation rate for working people in energy, for example, is much higher than wage rises. So living standards are still falling and the economy is still contracting. And at the same time, you say, but we're dealing with structural issues, including corruption. But those same people who are suffering falling living standards don't believe that you and your government are serious about tackling corruption and de-oligarchization. Why are you not doing more on that front?
Let's make step by step. Let's make it step by step. Let's start with energy and then with corruption, okay? So you've raised an issue of energy subsidies. And you said that people are not capable of covering the bill. This is not true. Every household who pays more than 10% of its total income is to get a direct support from the government. This is the truth. Then you say, look, it's bad that you've decided to impose a market-based prices for the energy. Tell me, how much do you pay in your country for the utility and communal bills? Tell me.
Well, if I tell you that, I'd have to tell you my salary too to explain.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Don't conceal it. Okay, tell me the sure.
What I'll tell you is that I am paid enough to more than be happy to cover my energy bills. That can't be said of most Ukrainians.
But I will be happy to listen to your energy bill. Tell me the price.
I'm simply going to tell you, as a proportion of my salary, it is more than manageable. For Ukrainians, that is not true.
Is it more than 10% or less than 10%?
Less.
Less
my
than
salary,
10%.
Yeah.
So you won't subscribe to our subsidies program.
Well,
okay.
That is a shame. But the bottom line is this: that people on the street look at what is happening to their wallet, their pocketbook, their household income, and they say, Mr. Prime Minister, why are you hitting us and not hitting your friends who run the big media companies, who run the industrial sectors, and who you, and we can talk about the detail, have protected?
You are not the first one who hates this Prime Minister. This is normal. So, look. You've asked another question on the social standards. Once again, it's all about facts. It's not just emotions. This government decided to increase wages, salaries, and pensions up to even 19%.
But what's the inflation rate here today?
Well, the inflation is high. I can't offset this inflation, but this is the first step. This is the real step of support. Then going back to corruption. Look, I would be happy to be both Prime Minister, Chief Justice, General Prosecutor, and Chief of the Anti-Corruption Bureau. But I believe that you in the UK guys know what the balance of power means, right?
Yeah, and the separation of powers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it means that everyone is to make its own job, okay?
Well,
so we as the government... Wait. We as the government, what's in our, I would say, powers? I will try to name it. First of all, deregulation. Prominent Minister Ivaris, Minister for Economy. Prominent Minister for Agriculture. They will deliver the speech what we already deregulated. How we eliminated this bloody Soviet-style red tape in economy, in agriculture. Yes, we have to do more. Because, the best way to tackle corruption is just to eliminate all these red tape bureaucratic impediments and roadblocks. Another issue. We've passed the bill on anti-corruption agency. The responsibility of the government to provide financing for this agency. We did it. So we expect the prosecutor's office and the House is to appoint a nomination committee to appoint an anti-corruption prosecutor. The third issue. This government passed tens of different bills on tax disclosure, on asset disclosure, and on a special procedure, scrutiny procedure for every public servant. It takes time to implement, Stephen. That's true. I would be happy to have it in a snapshot. That's not the way it works.
No, but let's just pick up on one of those points about the separation of powers and the very clear limits on your role and power. I mean, this is just a newspaper that came out today, the Kiev Post. It's picking up on something which many people in this room are very aware of. That is, one member of the executive in this country a certain Mr. Saakashvili, who is obviously now governor in Odessa. He says that there is clear evidence that you, far from keeping yourself to your own remit, have interfered in various different ways to safeguard the interests of certain oligarchs. We're talking about Mr. Kolomoisky. He's also worried about your links to Mr. Akhmetov. He accuses you of trying to block the reform of the customs system in Odessa. He says that in a whole series of different ways, you are an obstacle, a block. You are thwarting de-oligarchization and reform rather than speeding it up.
Okay, I'll provide you with the answer. First of all, I am not on a campaign trail for the president of Georgia, okay? Let's put it aside.
Well, let's not call him the president of Georgia. Let's call him a trusted ally of President Poroshenko, who's been appointed to a very big job here in Ukraine.
With all due respect, Steve, you've enlisted a list of so-called allegations. Let's answer every allegation, starting with Mr. Kolomoisky. You know, we have Mr. Kolomoisky. He is one of the Ukrainian oligarchs and tycoons. What this government did, and me personally, just to remind you that the state-owned company Ukernafta has two shareholders. 51% is state of Ukraine, 49% belongs to Kolomoisky and his allies. This government and me personally introduced to the parliament the bill how to take over the control over Ukernafta. It was my signature. We took over the control. We held the meeting of the shareholders. We appointed a new CEO. Yesterday, I met this CEO. We pre-agreed all terms and conditions of this contract, and we are to have new independent CEO. Then you mentioned Mr. Akhmetov. Absolutely. I supported him in increasing taxes, royalties, in pressing on him and on his business through the real increase of the tax burden over their business. We increased royalties for the raw materials in every sphere of the business that he is in. Anyone else in the list?
Well, the point, I suppose, is that you and President Poroshenko said that you were going to fight tooth and nail. You were going to be kamikazes in the cause of cleaning up Ukraine. You name me one big fish in this particular sea who has been held to account, put through the courts, and brought to justice for criminal corruption. Just name me one.
Once again, I can name you. As a prime minister, during the meeting of the Cabinet of Ministers, I allowed Homeland Security Department arrest Minister and First Deputy Minister of Emergency Service. They were arrested for corruption allegations. And I can provide you with the list of those who were arrested. But once again, I am not the Chief Justice. In 2 days, they were released on bail under the Ukrainian legislation. So we are doing our job. And please, I am not responsible for the prosecutor's office, neither for the prosecutor's office nor for judiciary. I am doing my jobs to fix the economy, to be back on track in terms of reforms, to provide energy efficiency reform, to provide financial resources for the Ukrainian military, to deregulate the economy, to improve corporate governance in state-owned enterprises. This is my job, and I am doing this job.
Your job is also to keep the coalition alive and to keep it effective. Now, you said in your opening remarks that you've lost one party from the coalition. I'm hearing rumors and concerns here in Kiev that such is the disaffection inside the parliament with your government that the debt restructuring deal, including the haircut, the debt relief, it may not get through the parliament, which would suggest to me that your government is no longer really viable.
As you mentioned the coalition, I was thinking to ask you, let's probably better talk about oligarchs. I have more answers.
We'll come back to oligarchs, but, you know, you are the Prime Minister and you've got to make a government work. And right now, your government
I know.
isn't working.
Let's start from the scratch, Steve. When we formed the coalition, we had 5 parties in the coalition. So formally, it is and it was the coalition. But actually, this coalition was based on 2 key pillars. This is the Prime Minister's party, which is People's Front.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, party of Petro Poroshenko, which is Party Solidarность. Then we had one member of the coalition who left actually the coalition. This is Radical Party. So he sharply criticized the president, the prime minister, but he always supported all necessary bills. Then we have my former political ally, Yulia Tymoshenko party. She is in the coalition, but she is in the opposition. So I am just wondering who is in the opposition in this country.
Well, I'm wondering it too. But I'm more particularly, because this matters, it's a real issue, I'm wondering whether you can deliver, for example, the debt deal through the parliament.
Just give me time to wrap up.
Well, you know, we don't have that much time. Just give me some straight answers.
I have to explain it to you.
Come on, then. Because
this Ukrainian political cuisine is quite specific. And the 5th member of the coalition, Samopomich of the mayor of Lviv. So, we always succeeded to pass all necessary bills. Even despite the fact that I've been facing tough attacks of the opposition and the members of the coalition, we did it a number of times. In the last 18 months, I personally passed 3 austerity packages. I do understand your question. If you, for example, ask David Cameron, can you run the government? His answer will be as blunt and simple, saying yes, because he has one-party government. I have a multi-party government and multi-party representation, and in this government I have only 3 ministers as a prime minister, and only 80 votes in the coalition out of 300 votes. So it's difficult to manage, but we will definitely pass that restructuring deal. This is the best ever deal. This is needed for the Ukrainian people, and I believe that Ukrainian politicians will be on the same page and support both that restructuring deal and amendments to the budget with social wages and pension increase.
So what will you make concessions on to get this through the parliament?
What kind of concessions?
Yeah, I mean, right now there are a lot of people inside the parliament saying they won't vote for your deal.
If they pass that restructuring bill, I will promise to the Ukrainian MPs that we are to reduce our debt by $4 billion, that we are to save another $1.5 billion of interest rate, and that we are to extend the maturity of our debts for another 4 years. And I will promise that in case if they pass this bill, we will increase social standards, wages and pensions from 13 to 19%. And I will tell them that this is the only way to fix the problem.
If you look at them like that, then they'll certainly pass the bill. Let me, while I still have a couple of questions left before we get to the audience, let me briefly touch upon Russia, relations with Russia. I think it's fair to say that in our conversations over the years, you've always been extraordinarily passionate and strong in your condemnation of Putin and Russia and your view of his sort of Soviet-style imperialism and your absolute conviction that Ukraine must fight this battle and will win this battle. Right now, it seems there's a bit of a turning point. The fighting in the east has calmed down. There's a lot of talk of new diplomacy, including meetings in Paris with Merkel and Hollande and Ukraine and Russia. Seems to me that your government is having to face the harsh reality that a form of autonomy and self-rule will be given to the East, which will allow Russia, frankly, to pull the strings for the indefinite future. Are you prepared to say now that that ultimately is the sort of deal that will have to be done?
We had 2 options on this Minsk deal, bad and worse. The worst option not to have Minsk, but is to sign Minsk. I want to be very open and frank with everyone sitting in this room. I was and I am skeptical about this deal. But I do understand that this is the only deal we have on the table. The thing is that I'm just contemplating an idea what kind of incentives Putin has to pull back from Ukraine. He personally ordered to deploy up to 40,000 troops, including Russian regular troops in Donetsk and Lugansk. For example, if a miracle happens and Putin decides to pull back, I can hardly imagine his video addressed to the Russian people. What he is to say. Putin facilitated a trap, a political trap for himself in Russia. There is no good solution for Putin. So if he goes and say, look, we decided to leave Donetsk and Lugansk, he is politically dead in Russia. If he goes offensive against Ukrainian army, trying to grab more land of independent country in Donetsk and Lugansk, he is dead in the world. So it's a stalemate for him. We've offered to Russia a number of off-ramps, which he never accepted. So, I will try to underline a number of points. The first one, yes, we have Minsk. And this Minsk is based on a number of key pillars. To impose a real ceasefire, to pull back Russian forces, and to seal the border. We are ready to have free and fair elections in Donetsk and Lugansk only in case if they meet all OSCE and ODIHR criteria. I can hardly imagine the way, for example, the OSCE is to confirm that we can easily hold free and fair elections under the barrel of the gun of Russian Kalashnikov, casting the ballots in every polling station. So there is no easy solution. And we will never make any kind of concessions, for example, like to make Ukraine as a federal state. No, this is the way how to dismantle Ukraine. And this is the action plan of Putin.
But with respect, some Ukrainians, maybe not many, but some Ukrainians believe that is precisely what you, in effect, are doing with your super autonomy package, with more powers to be given to the Donbass region. That's why there were all the protests outside the parliament. That's why, terrible things happened, including the deaths of 3 National Guardsmen after a grenade was thrown. That's why this country now looks as though it faces a threat, not just from the east and from Russia, but also looks as though it faces an internal threat because of the presence of heavily armed militias who believe that you and your team are selling out the country. And for too long, you've allowed these people to hold their weapons, to act as unofficial militias, and now you are reaping what you have sowed.
We are saving this country. We urge Russia to implement the Minsk deal. Ukraine executed everything what's on our side. And I want to be very clear that Ukraine is and was whiter than white in implementing the Minsk deal. We've paid our political capital in order to show to the entire world that we are eager to provide peace and stability and to de-escalate the situation. But the key thing is that everything is in the hands of President Putin. If he wants really to de-escalate the situation, he is to get out of Ukraine. If no, we are to act in concert with the global community to press on him. And please, I want to send a very clear message to our Western friends. If you send mixed signals to Putin, for example, that we contemplate an idea to lift sanctions in case if something minor happens, this is the weakness. This is the way how actually to underpin and support Putin in his aggression against Ukraine. This is not the language he understands. Sanctions could be lifted only in one case: if Minsk is fully implemented, if Donetsk, Lugansk, and Crimea is back.
Well, you may say that,
Stephen,
but
I'm
Francois Hollande and Angela Merkel are probably not waiting for the return of Crimea to look for ways to relax sanctions on Moscow.
Absolutely. So
let's talk about the EU, for example. In the EU, there is another crisis. After the Greece, you in the EU face a migration crisis. Let's elaborate on the roots of this crisis. What happened? Syria, right? Conflict and war in Syria. And people are suffering, they are living in the war zones, they are trying to find the way where to survive and the country where to survive. Can you remind me who supports regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria? This is President Putin. Can you remind me who is building a combat base in Syria? This is President Putin. Do you realize that this is the Russian plan to destabilize an entire geopolitics? We do understand as Ukraine what refugees means, because you in the EU have thousands of refugees, we have millions of IDPs. But let me put it very bluntly. We can succeed, we as a free world, only in case if we provide strong, one united response against the Russian-led aggression. Russia undermined and violated an international law. It's entirely unacceptable when the P5 member constantly violates the UN Charter. And we are just doing nothing, saying that, look, we'll probably we will lift sanctions if Putin imposes a ceasefire. This is not the condition, this is the precondition for the Minsk deal.
Right. I get the passion, and when we meet again tonight, we're going to explore that some more. But I shouldn't hog all the questions for the little time we've got left. I want to open it up because I bet you there's lots of people who want to ask you a quick question in the audience. So let's go for it and see how many we can squeeze in. You, sir, the microphone's right there. Tell us who you are and ask a question to the Prime Minister.
Stephen, I'm a former colleague of yours, Konstantin Eget from Moscow, former BBC Russian service. Mr. Prime Minister, my question is not about Putin, actually, coming from Moscow. It's about
Chechnya, no?
No.
Okay.
No. I learned my Photoshop long time ago. No, it's about the EU and the US. If you have to name one thing that you as a government, you as Ukrainian leadership, need from the United States, and one thing you need from the European Union, what would you say? Essentially, it's about your trust in your American and European partners, because, I mean, it seems that they are letting you down from time to time. Thank you.
Well, I can name you one thing that relates to both of them. To have Ukraine on US and the EU radars. Because we do understand that everyone is facing a number of troubles. The US is to fix the world, the EU is to fix a number of problems in the EU. So, and they have their own domestic politics too. So it's so important for us to have Ukraine for the United States and for the European Union as a key priority. Because Russia is not fighting just against Ukraine. Ukraine is a battlefield. Russian president fighting against the values of the free world. This is our joint fight for freedoms and liberties, for the free world and for the dignity of every human being. So that's our fight. Let's make it.
But I imagine you've given up on the idea of getting significant military support, so it's really more a question of economic and political diplomatic support. The requests you made for arms supplies and significant military support, they've fallen on deaf ears. You've given up on that.
No, we aren't. And I want to be very clear. We don't ask for the offensive weapon. We ask for the defensive weapon. For the defensive weapon to make Ukrainian military durable. We do understand that there is no military solution of this conflict. But there is no solution without military of this conflict. So we need to have strong army to deter Russian-led terrorists. And
you're not going to get those weapons, defensive weapons as you call them, from Washington and the Europeans, are you?
You've got some intel?
Well, I read the newspapers, as I'm sure you do, and I listen to what officials say in both the United States and in Europe. There's no desire to give you significant weapons.
Let's wait and see.
What for?
What
are we waiting for?
Some states are very reluctant. We are waiting for the defensive weapon. still are waiting for the defensive weapon.
But what you're really waiting for is a complete change of heart in significant capitals in the US and in Europe, and there's no sign of it happening.
Once again, Russian army is a threat to the global stability. Russian jets, military bad jets, constantly violate the airspace of NATO allies. Is it true? It happened
true,
even
yeah.
in the UK, right?
It did, yeah.
Russian military sends its submarines to your borders. Is it true? Russia tries to escalate the situation, political situation, in the EU, and they are politically bribing political forces and media in the EU. Is it true?
Well, I can tell you they're not bribing me because the brown envelopes with the dollars in have never arrived. So, no, that
I
may
am not
be
like
true.
you in terms of oligarchs. I trust you.
Listen, let's get 2 more questions in before we finish. If we can get a microphone over to the far side so we cover all the different sides. Yes, sir, you. We just get the microphone to you. Just tell us your name and a quick question for the Prime Minister.
My name is Spade Toms. I'm chairman of the British-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to come back to Mr. Sackur's question about customs. Many of our members complain that in Odessa, customs takes 2 to 3 weeks to clear containers. The containers are being systematically opened and bribes are being sought. Governor Saakashvili has proposed an e-government solution that reduce clearance to 1 day and eliminate the corruption. Can you support this?
The government already presented a comprehensive IRS reform. This is the reform of state fiscal service. So last week we toppled a deputy chief of the IRS responsible for customs. This week we already imposed new regulations of the way how to provide clearance in all customs clearance offices in Ukraine. So we asked for the technical assistance from the IMF, and we already got this technical assistance in terms how to facilitate the process of reform. And we started the process of comprehensive reforms mainly in the customs administration. I've got your point, and as far as I know, Chief of the IRS is to address the audience today? No?
Does it worry you that Mr. Saakashvili doesn't appear to have faith in your commitment on this point?
Once again, what worries me? Corruption in Ukraine definitely concerns me. And if the average salary of the customs officer is about $100 per month, he will definitely take bribes. If there is no system, I mean one solid and comprehensive system of the clearance procedures, they will take bribes. We can reshuffle IRS and customs administration 10 times. This will work just for a few weeks. Then they will use to new type of corruption. So what's on our agenda? To reform the customs unit, to impose a new software and hardware, how to provide the clearance, to increase wages and salaries for the customs officers, to work in concert with our Western partners in order to clarify the data, the trade data, and to make everything possible to root out corruption, not only in the IRS.
All right, last question. Let's see who gets it. You, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Stefka Slavova, Open Society Foundation, and working here in the strategic...
Put the microphone close to your mouth. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Stefka Slavova, Open Society Foundation, former EBRD board director. My question is very simple, Prime Minister, about the civil service reform. We have a strategic group working on that, and I understand that some of the legislation that's been proposed is not going through. Ukraine has a huge public administration apparatus. In fact, many say it's overbloated, and certainly many people, especially young Ukrainians, are looking for ways to professionalize and have a truly well-working public service, civil service. So could you say a few words about that as well?
Well, that's a crucial question for us. Because you asked a number of things, for example, why reforms are not so fast, you need to do more and this and that. So we have a very good team, high-profile team on the level of the cabinet. But the problem is that we need to have a very strong mechanism. So we need to have our foots on the ground. And there is a huge gap between the head and the foots. So to build up an institutional capacity of the government, this is the key priority. Last year, we reduced public servants by 20%. This year, slash is another 20%. So we have saved some money to increase salaries and wages for Ukrainian public servants. For example, you can ask Ivaras. Ivaras, you fired 50% of your ministry? And you can do more. Okay. By the end of the year. So public administration reform is extremely important due to another fact. Public servants are still dependent on politicians. So we want to build up the public service which is entirely independent, which not works for some kind of political forces. The only goal of every public servant is to serve the country, but not to serve politicians or political forces. So the government already introduced to the parliament a number of bills, and we expect that Ukrainian MPs to support public administration reform. And yesterday we had the chat with Commissioner Hahn over how to support from the EU public administration reform. And we truly appreciate the EU support in making Ukrainian public service stronger and more competitive.
All right. Well, listen, we unfortunately are out of time. I say unfortunately because I suspect both myself and you guys could spend quite a lot longer quizzing the Prime Minister, partly because he is so open and he's so prepared to take part in events like this, which I do appreciate, and I thank you again, Prime Minister. So we have to wrap this session up. Well, it's my good fortune, perhaps not his, that I'm going to see him later to record a HARDtalk interview for the BBC, so do watch that as well, and catch all the questions that I couldn't ask here, which I will ask later. But for now, please give him a very, very warm hand. Prime Minister, thank you very much.